And a top focus on Newspoint this morning. India's Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has hit out at former US President Barack Obama for his remarks on the protection of ethnic minorities in India. This comes as the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi returns to New Delhi after concluding his visit to US and Egypt. In an interview with the CNN on how Biden should engage with the leaders such as the Chinese President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, the former US President responded by saying that President Biden should question Prime Minister Modi. He said that the protection of ethnic minority in a majority Hindu India is something worth mentioning. He said, and I'm quoting here, "If I had a conversation with Prime Minister Modi, who I know well, part of my argument would be if you do not protect the rights of ethnic minorities in India, there is a strong possibility that India at some point starts pulling apart. And we have seen what happens when you start getting those large internal conflicts." Nirmala Sitharaman has now lashed out at the former US President Barack Obama, questioning his comments on the Indian ethnic minorities, saying that the US under his rule had bombed 7 Muslim majority nations. She further pointed to Egypt having become the 6th Muslim majority country to confer its highest civilian honor on Prime Minister Modi. Take a listen.
United States ka bayan de rahe.
It was surprising that when PM was visiting the US, a former US president was making a statement on Indian Muslims. I am speaking with caution. We want a good friendship with the US. But comments come from there on India's religious tolerance. Perhaps 7 Muslim-dominated countries were bombed due to him. More than 26,000 bombs were dropped.
Now, Nirmala Sitharaman was not the only one to react to Obama's comments. Former Commissioner of U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, Johnny Moore, too, reacted, saying that the former U.S. President should spend his energy complimenting India more than criticizing it.
The President should spend his energy complimenting India more than criticizing India. India is the most diverse country in human history. It's not a perfect country, just like the United States is not a perfect country, but its diversity is its strength, and we should be complimenting the largest democracy in the world every chance that we have. And so I think it was the time to celebrate a historic visit. Rather than leveling some criticism on it.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi returned to India today after a hectic 2-nation tour of US and Egypt. He was welcomed at the airport by senior leaders in the ruling BJP, who hailed his historic US tour. Like we mentioned, that 7 Muslim-majority countries were bombed under Obama's tenure. Let's tell you more about them. Starting with the war in Afghanistan. Even though the war was started by President Bush, Obama ordered airstrikes against suspected targets. Not only this, the unmanned drones were used during that, in which thousands of civilians were also killed. Moving on to the attack on Pakistan. Like Afghanistan, unmanned drones were again used against suspected targets, and several children were among those who were targeted and who were dead, especially in the northwest frontier province. Moving on to Libya. The United States of America launched an airstrike in Libya during the Arab Spring, and this triggered a refugee crisis in the country. Meanwhile, in Yemen, the United States of America again ramped up the use of armed drones, and millions were forced into hunger and poverty. Meanwhile, in Somalia, the United States of America targeted terrorists that were associated with SHABAAB, and several civilians were caught in the crossfire yet again. Meanwhile, in Iraq, the airstrikes were also ordered in Iraq. Obama was the 4th president in a row to order airstrikes in Iraq. And finally, in Syria, while Obama claimed to have carried out airstrikes on terrorist targets, the cycle of violence fueled a decade-long conflict in the country and also a refugee crisis.